speaking of who's on IR, everything going on, Charlie, this roster situation and how it's going to be handled over the next couple of weeks.
It's a very good question.
It might be, like, obviously, there's always the lunatic head coach who's constantly entertaining. He's just interesting. He's just interesting. Watching Michkov is like the number one reason to watch games. New things emerge. Like, oh my God, Emil Andrae, this is great. I can't wait to watch him on Thursday. But the most interesting, like, what are they going to do situation is the roster right now and the 23-man when guys start to get healthy.
Yeah, because right now they have Cam York and Jamie Drysdale on IR. That's how they were able to bring Ryan Poehling back without sending Anthony Richard back to the minors. However, both York and Drysdale, like, they're not out super long term. No. York could be back this week. Drysdale, you know, when you put a guy on IR, he's got to be out for 7 days. I believe Kevin Kerr said he thinks it's 2 weeks at most. So he's not going to be out for very long. At some point, they're going to need to get both of those guys back onto the roster. I would assume Richard is probably one guy who's going to go down. I don't think they're, like, wedded to him by any means. He probably goes down. Then the question becomes, who's the second guy? For a while, we thought it was going to be Andrae.
Just send Andrae back,
I don't know how they can justify sending him down.
There's no justification for it right now.
You can't.
So they're
unless
carrying,
he falls off.
Right now, carrying 14 forwards with Anthony Richard still up, Poehling off IR. That's, all right. Richard, he's probably the first guy on the chopping block.
Right.
6 D-men with York and Drysdale both on IR. Andre's up on the roster. We thought that was maybe the move, but you get to the 3 goalies.
Right.
With Kolosov still up.
Yeah, that's a question.
Fedotov looking as if, all right, maybe there is something there. And obviously Sam Ersson. Sidebar. They kept him pretty clean for the most part, I thought, through regulation last night. He made some big saves, but that overtime for Sam Ersson last night, hot damn.
Yeah.
He was incredible on that penalty kill.
He looks like a legitimately solid NHL goalie.
All right. Kolosov, Fedotov. That has to be what it is, right? Like,
well,
send Kolosov back?
I don't know what other choice you have. Like, unless you want to go nuclear, which, like, again, there's a crazy person running the team, not Danny. Danny is a very rational person. John Tortorella is who I'm referring to. Like, unless you want to go nuclear and send a message to Tyson Forrester and send him down, like, would I do it? No.
Wow.
Would the Flyers think that a message needs to be sent? Like, I don't know. It's not completely... There are things that a normal team, I would say, there's no way they would ever do that. But the Flyers, I'm like, well, I can't rule it out entirely because, like, John Tortorella is the head coach.
You know, I hadn't thought about the ELC guys.
He's the only other guy. It's Michkov who, like, they ain't sent it down. And then Forster.
Right,
they're the only other guys that are waiver exempt.
Brink signed a contract this offseason. Right.
So that's what I'm saying. Like, if you're keeping Andrae, unless you are going to go nuclear and try to send a big old message to Tyson Forrester, it's got to be one of the goalies. It has to be.
Do we have any clarification on, like, what that October deadline was or what exactly Kolosov's demands were or preferences?
Well, I think the demands were kind of nebulous. It was kind of like, hey, at the end of October, we're going to reassess where everything is. And then they never had to reassess because he got called up because Fedotov, like, it seemed like Fedotov was going to just kind of get put in mothballs for a while. Well, then they have to throw Fedotov into a game, and suddenly he looks like, hey, maybe this guy can actually play, which puts them in an interesting spot because now, like, obviously Ersson's back, and Ersson's the guy, and he deserves to be the guy. He's been their most consistent goalie this year by far. But it was a lot easier to justify to Fedotov, you got to go down for a conditioning stint, or we got to send you through waivers because, like, dude, you got an .820 save percentage. You've been terrible. Go down to the minors for a while and figure it out, and then we'll talk. Well, now he had a game where he looked pretty good. That doesn't mean the Flyers can't do it. Doesn't mean the Flyers still can't go to him and say, like, look, you're not going to get a lot of playing time. Let's send you down for a conditioning stint. Or they could waive him because no one's claiming him on that cabinet. Not a chance in hell. It just makes it tougher because obviously Fedotov is a guy. He's on the older side. He's got a lot of pride. There are probably some promises made to him before he came over, possibly that, like, hey, you know, you're going to get this year at least, probably both years, and we'll see how it shakes out. It's a little bit harder when he finally had a good game and then you just never play him again. However, and we've talked about this from dating back to the summer, Aleksei Kolosov is more important to the theoretical future of the organization than Ivan Fedotov is, simply because of his age. Like, if Fedotov is good, which so far, aside from one game, he hasn't been, but even in a world where he becomes good, what's he going to be on this team for like 4, maybe 5 years at most?
He turns 28 in 2 weeks.
Yeah, like that's best case scenario. If Kolosov is good, he could be on this team for a decade. So if it comes down to ticking off Ivan Fedotov by asking him to take a conditioning stint versus ticking off Aleksei Kolosov and him going back to the KHL and maybe never coming back, like there's an incentive to maybe pick Kolosov in this situation, especially because Kolosov has already shown that at the very least, like, he can hang.
Yeah.
I don't know how good he is at the NHL level yet, but he doesn't look awful.
He looks like a goalie who will one day be an NHL goalie.
I would agree with that.
And is right now just kind of getting by. That said, he has to play. And if you're gonna give Fedotov a look, like, kind of has to go back. He hasn't played in a little while now.
Yeah. I almost wonder if what they're kind of figuring is like somebody's going to keep getting hurt, because that could be how this gets resolved. Like, if before both York and Drysdale are able to come back, someone else gets injured and then they place that guy on IR and that allows them to kick the can down the road a little bit more and have 3 goalies for a little bit longer, maybe they'll just do that. Maybe that will be how they'll keep this going, and they'll only make a move on the goalies until their hand is truly forced, or until Andrae crashes back to earth and they can justify sending him back. Like, they might just be looking at this, because a lot of people ask me, like, what do you think they're going to do? My answer is, honestly, I don't think they know what they're going to do.
Yeah, because something always happens.
I don't think they know what they're going to do, and I think they're looking at it as the question might be answered itself by just the circumstances of hockey.
How many times have we been in situations similar to this when we're like, okay, well, you move these pieces, and it's like, oh, yeah, man, 2 guys got hurt. We have another 2 weeks to figure this out.
Yeah.
It happens all the time.
We all silly like the mayor.